All right, so today I am joined by Alex Miller, the assembler of Neuronite, which is designed around the needs of the neurodivergent community. So, Alex, thank you for taking some time to chat with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, tell me, what can you tell us about this first ever one of a kind event, and what can people expect?
Well, it's first ever with the caveat to my knowledge. Like I feel like I can't have been the first person to have thought of this, but I'm not trying to take credit for
Yeah, totally understand.
coming up with it. But to my so if somebody else out there is doing something similar, I'm not trying to take away from you. But as far as I know, in Los Angeles and specifically East LA, where we are holding Neuronite. There has never been a mini festival that centers and prioritizes the needs of the neurodivergent community, which, of course, as we all know, overlaps with the LGBTQ IA2S plus folks and capital D lower D disabled folks, and then BIPOC folks. We're all
All
intersectional, right?
intertwined, yeah.
So while I can't cater to all of that at once, we are specifically working on making a mini music festival that is neurodivergent friendly and also ADA accessible, beyond ADA accessible. So the sort of nuts and bolts would be like the bathrooms are gender neutral. Like if you have a mobility device or you're in a wheelchair, you're not just like cordoned off into like a section. You can go
Mhm.
wherever you want. And then in terms of the space, it we are working with our partner, Media Pollution, which is a space in down to, East LA, which is completely customizable and down to like where the walls are. So I assembled a team of neurodivergent designers because I am a neurodivergent person. I have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and anxiety with a touch depression, which is a fun combo. But but I, for example, don't know what it's like to have ADHD or autism or schizophrenia and so the event is designed around making sort of a neuro sparkly wonderland where you can have as much or as little stimulation as you want,
Okay.
and you can also take as many breaks as you want. So let's say you want
Nice.
to, watch this band. There's four acts. You want to watch this band, uh, and then like halfway through, you're feeling like a little like too much. There's like literally a decompression tent with like noise canceling and soft things to lie down in, and so it's uh designed around centering people that are not centered in, well, anywhere, but especially concerts. I've never been to I'm a musician. I've been playing in bands for longer than I haven't been, and all the shows I played are based around neurotypical abled folks, and that's before you even get to anything like queer, right? So you know as a singer, I've always carried my own microphone, right? Because I other singers out there will know, if you are not the first person to touch the club microphone, that means when you go on, it has all the spit of the previous singer there, and
Yeah.
there's a trick to unscrewing it and like cleaning it.
Mhm.
But as someone with OCD, that's still a nightmare. So I, even before global pandemic started, I was always super cautious about that. But there's not like there's clubs don't clean the microphones. They
Oh,
don't think about this kind of stuff.
yeah.
I mean, maybe if you're on Green Day or Lady Gaga's level or something, you get your own, but certainly not for indie musicians. So all the performers on this event are neurodivergent, or at least the front people. I can't speak for everyone in each band. And since this is the first one, I am allowing myself the luxury of being one of the performers because I haven't played on stage since January 2020, which is the longest I've ever gone in my life. I've been
Oh,
playing music professionally since I was 14 and I'm 42. So like that's a
Long
long
time.
time. Yeah. But the reason for that is because I couldn't think of a safe way to do it for indie artists. So let's say I'll date myself with who influenced me, but if you're Green Day,
I love
maybe, oh, they've been disappointing me lately, which we can talk about in a second. But my all-time favorite band and the reason that I got into playing music, my first guitar was the Blue Stratocaster.
Grease.
I thought just at the time I didn't know. I thought just I really liked Billy Joe. Like there was just something about him, and turns out it was a crush. Anyway, but I they have the money to create a bubble around themselves to keep themselves safe.
Mhm.
Uh, but there's still a pandemic happening, and whenever they play, they're playing to like 50,000 people. There's no precautions taken, so each
Yeah.
one of those is a super spreader event, and just change out their name with your favorite headlining artist, whether they're a legacy artist or whether they're someone who's playing those kind of big festivals.
Mhm.
And so on a smaller extent, even if I'm playing to like 300 people, that's 300 people cramped in a room with no ventilation, and somebody's going to get sick. It's one in currently right now it's 1 in 36 people that has been exposed to COVID. And even that statistic messes with your mind, because you think, oh, okay, so 1 to 35, I'm good, it's the 36th person.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
no, it could be the first person or the fifth or the 17th, and then each one of those people has a 1 in 36 chance. And so it's actually, even though the CDC became a political agency and stopped reporting everything, and there's very little data, there are activists that you can follow that keep track of this. And it's still a very dangerous world, especially for immunocompromised folks, Black and brown folks,
Yeah.
disabled folks. So that was another part of, I really wanted to make sure that the event catered to that. So it's also the strictest COVID protocols of any event that I heard of. Everybody has to be masked. We're providing the masks free of
Okay.
charge, um, except for the performers while they're on stage, but they will COVID test during sound check earlier in the day. And then when they're not on stage, they too have to wear masks. In fact, that's the only reason uh, we'll have security there, is just to make sure people
Or
keep their
Mac.
masks on. Because I know everybody's seen the, like, I'm wearing my mask. And it's like,
Yeah.
how do you think masks work? I've
Exactly.
got it on. It's working. I was like, this is good, right? Yes. Right.
There, yeah. Yes.
Uh, so that's sort of the short version of what's going on. Oh, and I have to mention that this is all, because it's in my contract, made possible by a grant from community partners
Oh,
and the
nice.
California Creative Corps. Because like I certainly don't have the money to put on a festival,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I was one of 1,000 people that submitted for this grant, and then they chose 33 fellows, and each of those people is doing an amazing project. I'm the only one doing a music festival, but you should really check out California Creative Corps. It's like Corps,
Okay.
CORPS website, but you can see the list of the fellows and stuff. So I'm
Awesome.
just honored to be a part of that.
For sure. And so Neuronite will take place on July 26th at Media Pollution in Los Angeles. If successful, would you eventually like to see Neuronite expand to other cities?
Yeah, regardless of whether or not I'm playing it, my ideal thing would be to do this first one, which we're not going to get everything right, but we'll have an operating model and a budget. Like, here's how much it
Yeah.
costs to do this, and I can give that to other entities, and have it become a subdivision of the work I do under my artist name Vattica,
Mhm.
which makes music, makes art, has a pretty decent following on TikTok. So it does like social commentary stuff, socio-political stuff on there, and then also now events. And the idea is that there could be simultaneous Neuronites happening all over the world. And I could be involved in assembling them, but it's not about me and my ego. Like, I don't have to play
Yeah.
them. So if you wanted to have, for example, this on my computer is strapped into the wall. If you wanted to have, this one's a more rock focused Neuronite, but if you wanted to have a mariachi one or a salsa one or a Balinese or traditional whatever style you want to, all EDM rave, like uh you'd be able to do it safely this way and for this amount of money
Yep.
specifically.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
so the longer answer, but the short answer is yes. I
Yes,
definitely would love to see it expand, and for other like venues and entities like Steel to take the idea. Like there's no reason that we can't have larger events and make them safe and accessible for people.
for sure. And not only is Neuronite an opportunity for neurodivergent people to gather in a safe space and have fun, but it really seems like this is a therapeutic process for them as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime um, you see yourself represented, and then not only represented but prioritized, is can be cathartic,
Mhm.
especially if you've never had that, in any way. Right now I'm in Los Angeles, which is supposed to be the one of the most progressive cities in the America,
Mhm.
and it's pretty mid, I would say. it's
Really?
it's like, I mean, compared to, Florida, sure, but in terms of, same thing with San Francisco. I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm from the Bay Area originally. It's not, when the conservative pundit will get on and say that liberal hellhole of San
Yep.
Francisco, it's not really that much. It's more like centrist. So there's really no place in America, at least in this current point in our timeline, that is like leftist or beyond.
Mhm.
So I think that there are many people who have to mask, especially when it comes to neurodivergence. For example, um, so part of getting this grant means that I also was paid a year's salary. So I was
Okay.
able to quit my previous job, where I was a music teacher for an institution that shall not be named, but a college institution.
Okay.
And while I greatly enjoyed my students, the place itself was a nightmare for someone with OCD,
Mhm.
just based on, imagine the worst, scariest bathroom you've ever been to. Maybe it's one on the I-5, a club you went to somewhere, right?
Okay.
I would rather roll around nude in one of those than the bathrooms that they had there, right? And as someone who's dealing with like massive anxiety when it comes to germs,
Yeah.
there, I couldn't go to my superior, for example, and say that, because they'd just be like, "Well, you're crazy."
Yeah.
And that's the problem with neurodivergence, is that uh, people aren't crazy. Their brain just works differently. Now, some of that divergence might also carry some suffering with it,
Yeah.
but so does also just being a human being, right? So it doesn't. There's this stereotype that neurodivergent people, especially the more outwardly extreme it is, they're
Mhm.
broken in some way, right?
Yeah.
And it's no, it's just there's this diversity of how brains function.
Yeah.
Um,
So is that something you wish people understood better about the neurodivergent community?
yeah, because do you suffer from chronic anxiety? You're neurodivergent. Are you depressed all the time? You're neurodivergent. Do you like? There's so the word has taken on its own sort of activist meaning, which is separate from the meaning that was in like the DSM-4 or the DSM-5, the therapy
Yeah.
handbook, which is a more clinical, very specific definition, uh, and usually includes a phrase like mental disorder or
Yeah.
something. And these kind of this kind of language is not neutral, right? Nothing's neutral, but to say mental disorder implies a deviation
Mhm.
from order.
Yeah.
And so again, that's the road to create. Most people are just like, oh, the person's crazy, dude, and it's like, no. Uh, so like someone with ADHD, like their brain just works differently. And if you make it's actually very little accommodations usually, uh, they can excel at stuff, just not the way that it was built. It was only built for neurotypical, abled, cis, het, white people, right? And if that's what America was built for, it's in the Constitution. And there's such a diverse range of people that are not that, who are not included. So the more people can be included across all spectrums, because all aspects of a human being are spectrums,
Yeah.
then you create a more inclusive and representative picture of what it can mean to be a human being, as
Mm,
opposed to Barbie and Ken.
definitely, definitely. When did you realize that you were neurodivergent? Do you mind sharing a little bit about your own personal story?
Sure, sure. So I was born in 1982, and so that's something you're born with, OCD, but it didn't. There's usually an event that makes it manifest, usually some sort of trauma of some kind. And mine was, I think I was 12 or 13, when I remember having symptoms. But no one really knew what it was at that time. And I remember going to a series of therapists, uh, and it was like many, until we found one who specialized in it, and then I was able to get a correct diagnosis and treatment, which is called ERP, exposure and response therapy. So it it sucks. It's short. Basically, okay, are you afraid of phones? So first we're going to say the word phone a bunch, and then we're going to talk about phones. Then you're going to think about phones, and as treatment progresses, now you're going to be holding the phone. And then so it's basically like you just run towards the thing that you're afraid of until you realize that it's not going to hurt you. Now, a lot of times OCD can have like magical thinking or superstitious thinking associated with it. The
Yeah.
classic example, of course, is germs. Everybody's seen the show Monk,
Yeah.
or the film As Good as It Gets. Turns out true love does not cure OCD, and it does not give you detective superpowers. It just makes your life harder. And you have to get like something simple as touching a parking meter, right? Or a better example, gas station handle.
Okay.
If you look up, a gas station handle has 10,000 times more germs than a toilet seat does. So like, and you see people just doing it every day, all the time,
Mhm.
and they're fine. But you have this knowledge that, okay, well, they were all fine, but maybe you won't be, or maybe you'll be fine, but you'll spread a germ to somebody else that you care about. And then, whoa, what if there's a tropical disease on there? And then your mind just sort of like spins out.
Yeah.
And so if it was gas pump handles that I was afraid of, then it would be working up, the exposure and response therapy would eventually be pumping gas with my bare hands and not washing them. Right.
Yeah.
And then what happened for me is my OCD went what's called like subclinical. So it's like sort of like a radio faintly on in the background of my mind for like 20 years.
Mhm.
And halfway during the first year of 2020, uh it changed themes, which is so I didn't always have the germ focused OCD. Before, it was like this magical thinking, childish stuff that's not, because I was a kid, that's not worth going into. But it switched themes because we were right in the middle of I guess we're still in the middle of the ongoing pandemic, but the beginning of the pandemic, and no one knew how like COVID spread at that time or anything. And so it latched onto that and then extrapolated out from biohazards to just all germs. And I had a massive relapse in or resurgence of symptoms that caused such a deep mental anguish that Alex, the person, really isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a husk of a person going through and doing rituals. And I don't know how deep you want to get into an OCD discussion, but I have fortunate that I have a good support team, my
Yeah.
partner, my family, and then found a great therapist and in LA and worked through it. And now I'm functional again due to that work and also large doses of medication.
And also
Fun
you
fact, fun fact, the number one prescribed medication for OCD is Paxil.
Oh, okay.
Paxil, Paxil was invented slightly before I was born,
Mhm.
and not really tested that much on humans. And then psychiatrists were given a incentive to prescribe that by the drug companies. And so my generation is the test subject generation for Paxil, and no one knew what the side effects were going to be. And now we start to learn what some of them are. And one of them that I was thrilled to learn in my 20s is hair loss. So it's just another way that capitalism hurts everybody, including your vanity.
Exactly, exactly. And you've also been able to kind of like help your OCD and stuff through your love of music as well. Is that correct?
What music has always provided me is 100% focus on something.
Okay.
And if you've ever experienced that, you forget yourself.
Okay.
And I would also forget my thoughts. I would just be music. And so in that way, yes.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that, so if I'm writing a song or producing a song or mixing and mastering or performing a song, there is no Alex at that point. There's just the song that's happening. And
Okay.
I don't mean that in a pretentious way. I mean that's what it
Oh
feels
no.
like.
Yeah.
Not like I'm a channel, brah, for the but it feels like I become that thing temporarily. And so yeah, there's peace there. Music has always been a lifesaver for me.
Hmm.
But then, how long is a song? 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and then you're back to, so I don't think it certainly has not, there's no cure for OCD, just like there
Yeah.
isn't for ADHD or
Yeah.
any of the,
Hmm.
but it's been a constant in my life, music, and it's like 70% of who I am. So yeah, I've definitely found comfort there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And are you doing anything new for Neuronite with Vattica?
Yes, so I have a new single called Wealth,
Okay.
which is basically an anti-capitalist anthem about the powers that be and how the only thing that they care about is money and power at the cost of everything else, including all of us and the earth. And like we're living through a global apocalyptic collapse, basically, which could have been avoided starting, if you do the research, starting in the 1950s. Like Enron and stuff knew that they were going to cause global warming,
Yeah.
and they were just like, well, let's suppress that information, Johnson. And so it was all preventable, but greed,
Agreed.
power. So that the song, of course, has that in the lyrics, but it's like a catchy rock pop metal anthem kind of thing. And it comes out next month.
Awesome. And who are the other performers that's going to be at Neuronite?
Yeah, so we got Frankie Simone, which is like a bubblegum pop Afro Latina artist. Like she's
Okay.
they're awesome. We have Elisa Cherie, which is I'd say like sort of traditional rock and roll, which is really cool. And then we have Cinnamon Babe, which is new metal, or I should say new metal,
And
because they're 28. So it's I'm sure you've noticed that the 90s are sort of like recycling themselves
oh
right
yeah,
now. So
yeah.
so there's people so it's healthier new metal. Instead of Limp Bizkit, it's people singing about things that actually matter instead of yeah, that guy,
Yeah, exactly. Yes. All right, Alex. Well, how can one stay up to date and find out more information about Neuronite?
Yes, you can go to neuronite.org. The night is spelled NITE, so neuronite.org. You can go to Instagram, neuro.night. You can go to me, which is Vattica, Vattica bio, and all my links are there, including links to Neuronite. And that's the fastest, easiest way to learn more. And also get involved, because we'll be forever taking applications for new artists, vendors, people that want to help. Even though this first one is booked, otherwise I wouldn't be on here doing press for it. Like we were saying earlier, the idea is for this to continue.
Yeah. And you like to make this annually?
I'm sorry?
You would like to make this annually?
I'd like it to be more than annually. I'd love to, we were talking earlier about what is my role, what is my title for this?
Yeah.
And I chose assembler. First I was like founder, and then I was like, but the problem with that is it's toxic individuality. It makes it seem like I have the ideas and I am the person, and no, like I know how to book a show, and I'm good at bringing the right people together to make a team. So that's what I've done. And I'm the grant recipient, so I have the cash. But it's a collective effort of not just the performers, but the people behind the scenes, all of which you can also see on the Neuronite website. They're featured, and obviously in the press that I'm doing too. The other radical thing that we're doing is paying everybody a fair stipend for their work.
Nice. Okay.
Which varies depending on the job, but there's nobody that feels like their labor is being exploited, because there's no such thing as like unskilled labor, or like the whole idea of like an intern or a PA like doing it for the experience. Like, that's just ridiculous. We live in a capitalist hellscape. Everybody needs to pay bills. So that's another thing that with this grant I've been able to do, that I'm really happy with and proud of, because and it's another reason, that grants should continue to be funded. I don't know if you heard, but they're cutting a lot of grant funding for the arts.
Yeah.
And that's just a travesty, because we need art and its offshoots of various activism more than ever, and certainly more than like 500 more cops or something, like whatever they're diverting the money to. So yeah, I'd love there to be simultaneous Neuronites happening, just not all in LA. So if they're across the world, it'd be great. And
Awesome.
any way that I can help facilitate that, I want to.
Awesome. Fantastic.